Hey, my name is Renee Luketic, and I help mentor parents who want to live a fruit-bearing life, raising a fruit-bearing family. And that starts with parenting with purpose. So today on episode 1, whether you're listening on podcast or you're watching online, we're going to talk through the 5-step strategy to parenting with purpose so that you can become a fruit-bearing family. So many times we get so caught up in wanting to parent well. And, we say tomorrow starts, the day that we're going to parent with purpose. And we're going to get this parenting thing, just down to its science. And our kids are going to go to bed on time and they are just going to be kind all the time. And so you get all of these self-help books and you join some groups and you Pinterest and you Pinterest and you Pinterest. And you go to bed exhausted, and honestly, it can be so overwhelming that you actually don't know how to make those steps of change, because by then you just are filled with people's opinions and to-do lists and downloads. So none of those things are bad, and I also will be providing those. But the trick is to make sure that you are doing it from a place of knowing your why, of why it is important to parent on purpose, and then to just systematically create one new habit at a time. So when I say that I get the privilege of mentoring parents and families, that's exactly what I'm talking about. So whether it is you're a part of my upcoming membership, or you are just listening on a podcast, or you found us on YouTube, it doesn't matter. For this little bit of time, if you'll let me, I just want to mentor you and encourage you, okay? So let's get started on step number 1. Step number 1 is to know your foundation, know your why, okay? So one of the things that I suggest is to work on a family mission statement. And this isn't just some Pinteresty cute little thing that you can get put above your door or when you first walk in, from your doorway, although those things are great. But what it's more about is it's a heart thing. It's a heart and mind thing. So as Christ followers, our foundation, our why, has to be rooted in God's truth. Because I'll just tell you, and I know you already know this, but there are so many self-help books out there on parenting, and many of them are so helpful in the practical. But people's ideas of what parenting looks like changes over time. Do you know whose idea of parenting never changes over time? God's. God's heart for your family has never changed, will never change. And so when his heart is your foundation, then what happens is you might activate his heart differently in your home as your kids' needs change or your lifestyle changes. But the heart behind it, God's truth, is always the same. So your foundation is simply your why. That's it. Your why you do what you do. And, in the Bible, it talks about the wise man that built his, his house, his foundation up on the rock, having a firm foundation. And then the other man built his on sinking sand. We do not want our parenting to be built on sinking sand. We want it to be on a foundation that cannot be cracked, no matter what the world throws at us, what our own brokenness throws at us, because God is greater than that, right? So your family foundation basically is your non-negotiable family values. And so part of writing a mission statement is not to stress you out or think you have to be this great, eloquent writer, but so that your why is your target that never moves. The other steps that we're going to talk through, they're always changing depending on the age of your kids or what area of your habits inside of your household that you're trying to work on to reflect God's heart more, or honestly, just as your kids even age and they transition, things change. Okay, but your foundation never does. Now, you will add to your foundation, right? You're always going to be adding God's truth and his foundation to your life and to your parenting. We'll talk more about that in the later steps. But for your mission statement, here's a great one that would be my family's mission statement, even now that we are grandparents and all of that fun stuff. We have a daughter-in-law, a grandbaby, future grandkids on the way. But something that was important when we were raising our son is that even if we didn't have it up on a doorway or on a cute little chalkboard sign, it's that our character in our home needed to reflect God's heart. So here's a great, simple example of a family mission statement. And you are so free to use this or tweak it to make it your own. Our family will live a life dedicated to following Jesus and will reflect God's heart in our home. Now, in other mentor times on our podcast and online and in our membership, we will talk a little bit more about your role as a parent and why it's important that you parent with discipleship in mind, even before your children have made a decision to follow Christ, because that is your role as a Christ follower, to walk in obedience in how you raise your children. So let's say that that's our foundation family verse, right? Our family will live a life dedicated to following Christ and will reflect God's heart in our home. All right, so that is your foundation. That is why it's important for your kids to honor one another. It's why it's not okay for them to bully one another. Why? Because we're going to live a life following Jesus and reflecting God's heart in our home. And God's heart is that we are kind and loving and gentle, right? That we tell the truth, that we do not gossip, that we honor one another. You get the idea. So now that we know what our foundation is of living a life following Christ and reflecting God's heart in our home, now we get to step 2. So once step 1 is out of the way, it's never changing, right? So step 2 is where we make our plan. So your foundation, I want you to think of it that your foundation is your why, and your plan, step 2, is your where. Now, I know you think, well, hey, shouldn't the plan be how? Well, that's actually step 3. Your plan is where you see that your family needs to apply that foundation. Okay? So let's say that getting out of the door on time to go to school or to go anywhere is just a challenge. Your family cannot be on time anywhere. And you say, it would be so great if we could just get out the door on time and be honoring to what we have committed to. Well, guess what? Because your why, your foundation, is that you're going to live a life dedicated to Christ, right? To follow Jesus, and you are going to reflect God's heart in your home. Well, a really great scripture, right, is about, honoring people and living at peace with all men as much as it is with you. And so there's a lot of great verses that you can actually pull that is God's truth of why it's important to be where you say you will be when you say you will be there. Okay. So step 2 is your where. So basically you take your family foundation statement and you start to rough draft some areas in your life and in your family life that you would like to see God's heart reflected more. Don't overthink it. Just jot them down quickly. So this could be, again, getting out of the house on time. This could be you as a parent being a lot more gentle with the way that you give correction to your children, right? And so it could be exactly that, how you speak at home, whatever that looks like. So you have your why, which is your foundation. You have your where. Where do you need to apply that foundation? Okay. And then your step 3 is how are you going to put that plan into action? That's your how. So your foundation is your why. Your plan is your where it's going to be applied. And your step 3, which is your action, right? It's your how. Okay. So what steps are you going to take to actually implement that plan that you had in step 2? And here's the thing. I need you to take very small steps. Okay. I need you to not overwhelm yourself or your kids. We are going for a long-term habit here. This is not just for you to get a check mark to say, yay, we made it out of the door on time and we got to where we were going. This is a lifestyle of learning. Parenting with purpose is not about perfection. It's about learning and growing together. It is about teaching your children to be able to learn to do this 5-step process in every area of their life. Yes, we're applying it to parenting, but it's what we see Jesus did with his disciples. When he discipled them and he mentored them, the foundation was God's truth. And then he would teach them where God's truth needed to be applied in their lives and with those around them. And then he would give them a plan, right? A how-to of action steps to apply the plan that's based on the foundation, right? So next, step 4 is once you have your foundation, your why, then you have your plan of where to apply that foundation, and then you have your action steps. You're actually going to put steps to the plan, which becomes your how. And again, you want them to be simple before you even get to step 4. So let's say that you need to get out of the door on time. That's always a great one, no matter if you are an empty nester like us, or you have little ones under your feet, or you have teenagers who just seem super slow like molasses. Whatever it is, one of the action steps in your step 3 would be everybody have their clothes laid out the night before, have, lunches pre-packed as much as possible, backpacks at the front door, shoes at the front door. And so, you just pick 5 things that say, hey, these are steps that make it easier. So if everybody's, looking to grab, hey, did you get your paper signed, for school? Do you have your shoes? Do you have socks and shoes? Do you have matching shoes? All those things, those conversations that happen in the mornings, especially if you have little ones that are learning to do some of those things for themselves. So those are things that are totally up to you to be able to lead well in your home and really walk out that verse, live in peace with all men as much as it is with you. And that means taking the lead and being patient, that you are going to have to repeat this over and over the night before, not yelling, not screaming, but reflecting God's heart to mentor and to train your children, right? And so what ends up happening is it becomes a habit eventually, to where it's just routine. Everybody knows after dinner that before they go play, they put their shoes in their backpack, at the front door because they did their homework before dinner. And here's the thing, walking in gentleness and kindness and love and really bearing the fruit of the Spirit does not mean that it is not fun. It doesn't mean that your house is still not going to be chaotic. It's just going to be organized chaos. Listen, that loudness in your house, it's a beautiful thing. You don't want to squelch their spirit, and their sense of adventure, but you do want to redirect it to reflect God's heart. They can still have fun. They can still roughhouse, but they do need to learn self-control of what it looks like to just take a minute and to honor one another so that you can have peace in your house. And we can't have peace in our home if we never invite the Prince of Peace into our home and into your family habits and into your planning. Okay, so just a really quick recap before we get to steps 4 and 5. Remember, step 1 is your how. It's your family foundation, your non-negotiable values. Step 2 is where you make a plan. It's your where. Where are you going to apply that foundation in creating new habits? Step 3 is where you put your plan into action, and that is your how. Those are your steps, right? So you say your plan, the where you need to apply the foundation, getting out of the door on time. Your step 3, your action steps, backpacks by the front door, lunches pre-packed, shoes at the front door, clothes laid out the night before. You get the idea. Okay, then we're going to go to step 4. Step 4 is review the plan and the results. So you're going to reflect, review, and redirect. Now, this is what some of you are already thinking. Oh, something else I can feel like a failure at and get the big F, right? Or worse, the incomplete, because you couldn't even get everybody out of the door on time, even after trying it for a week. Here's the thing. I need you to see step 4 as a positive step. Remember, I told you parenting with purpose is not about perfection. It's simply about learning and growing and reflecting God's heart in your home more today than it was reflected yesterday. And that means as a parent that you have to guard your reactions when you aren't meeting the mark of getting out of the door on time. This is about learning and growing. You are raising adults that when they go to work as an adult, they need to be out of the door on time. So you are helping them on that end result. And I know we're getting through these sort of quickly. And in our membership, we break this down and go a lot farther. But I just want you to be able to get an idea that you can do these things on your own and with a group and do them well. Okay, so next for our review, reflect, review, and redirect. It is going to take some time to redirect your family. And what you might find as you are reviewing, hey, how have we done this week in getting out of the door on time? You want to have these conversations with your kids. Hey, how did we do getting out of the door on time? And how do you think that we could do it better? Maybe it's a race to see who can get in the car on time and the quickest, whatever it is, have some fun with it. Talk about why is it important that you get to church on time or to school on time, and how when you're late, how does it affect those around you? Okay. So you want it to be super positive. And that redirect, look at how many times Jesus had to redirect his disciples in how they were doing things. He would teach them, and then he would show them, and then he would take them to do what he showed them. And then he would send them out to do it on their own. And then they would come back and sometimes it was, Jesus, I was able to do that before, but now I can't. And he would just systematically talk with them and help them know what they did well and what didn't go well, and to guard them back into God's truth on that subject. Okay, then, so you're going to repeat that process. As you're reflecting, you just redirect, right? And what you're doing for your 5-year-old to get out of the door on time, when they are a teenager, this becomes a habit of a culture of honor of getting out of the door on time, but it will have to be tweaked. And that's just part of discipleship, and that's okay. So your step 5 is to celebrate your family's new habit. So, hey, it's been, say a week or 2 weeks of you getting out of the door on time and people knowing, hey, we're going to put our shoes at the door, including grown-ups. Sometimes we're the worst. We're worse than the kids. That whole leading by example thing gets us sometimes. So as you're doing these things, you say, wow, we did it. So you need to celebrate that. Okay. And you need to say, wow, what have you noticed that is better because we get out of the house on time? And most likely everyone's going to say, oh, nobody's stressed. Mom and dad, you're not yelling, being the drill sergeant, and the kids are not lollygagging, and they're being more honoring, and everybody's more joyful on the, on their car ride to school or to the bus stop or whatever that might look like. And we'll talk further in future episodes about what that really looks like, broken down a little bit at a time. So you want each area of your family life to reflect God's heart and to really bear his fruit of the Holy Spirit. So I encourage you, you can create new habits for your family. I'm so excited to go on this journey with you, and look forward to bringing you more episodes to mentor you through the process of parenting with purpose and bearing a fruit-bearing life with your family. Until next time, my friend.